Hey guys, welcome to the P Squared Biology Podcast. I'm joined again by my sister.
Hey guys.
And this time it's going to be a combination of a podcast and also the book review, but also talking about the subject a little bit, and especially how the book relates to it. It's going to be around the Tyrannosaur Chronicles. Or first, anything new, Hope?
Yeah, I'm pretty excited. In 2 weeks from today, the day that we're recording this, it's going to be the Tampa Bay Comic-Con. Mm-hmm. And I'm super excited. I'm dressing up. My fiance and I are dressing up. I've been getting super into it. I've been reading a lot of backdated comics on
and
Black...
who are you going to be?
I'm going to be Black Canary, so I've been reading lots of back issues of comics that she's in.
Sweet.
I'm super excited.
Yeah, I've only been once. I know a lot of people dress up. I didn't. For me, just starting a new job, being a plant bounty hunter again. Not really. Just aquatic weed control, mostly aquatic. So let's get started. All right. So I wanted to bring you on, Hope, because from my understanding, your favorite movie has Tyrannosaurs in it, right?
It does.
Is it with Will Ferrell?
It is.
Land of the Lost.
It's a good one. It's my favorite comedy. I watch it about once a year. It's just a tradition to watch it. Yeah. At this point.
I probably watch it at least once a year too. It's one of those movies like you come in expecting a lot because as Will Ferrell, it's a little bit like not typical humor, which is why I think a lot of people don't like it. But I think the more you watch it, the more you get the jokes a little bit and the type of humor.
Definitely. I remember the first time I watched it, not that I didn't like it, but I didn't think it was anything special. But then I watched it maybe 2-3 more times, and I was just like, wow, I really like this movie.
Yeah, there's a lot of subtle humor. Anyways, yeah, the Tyrannosaur book, it's pretty good. I first heard about it through the fossil form. I just checked to see if the county library system had it. It did, and I like this book. You know, again, Tyrannosaurs aren't my specialty, and just reading this book, I'm not an expert, but definitely I like learning about predators, especially huge apex predators, just like my favorites, the sharks. And for convenience sake, we're just going to call all the Tyrannosaurs, Tyrannosaurids, all the basal and derived ones, we're just going to call them Tyrannosaurs, kind of, even though I know there's different subcategories. So yeah, we're just going to scratch the surface, have a little fun with it, discuss some trends. I'm going to quiz Hope a little bit.
I don't know how well I'll do, but we'll try it.
Yeah, we'll see. Alright, so probably one of my favorite parts of this book, because of course everybody knows about, T-Rex, Tyrannosaurus Rex, the apex predator, the late Cretaceous. But I enjoyed reading about the Jurassic, of course T-Rex from the Cretaceous. Even though it's called Jurassic Park, T-Rex didn't live during the Jurassic. But the smaller, more ancient Tyrannosaurs lived during the Jurassic. They're much smaller, they had bigger arms. T-Rex is a very derived, unique animal. When you think about it, I hope you can see that, right? Like how strange T-Rex is compared to other dinosaurs.
Well, yeah, definitely. And even when you look at more modern animals, there's really nothing except maybe aside from chicken and other bird animals, but there's nothing that looks strikingly like a T-Rex, size-wise or body proportion-wise.
Yeah, definitely. The book goes into depth about not only T-Rex but other Tyrannosaurs, how, their body size and proportions changed. But talking about how there's nothing like a T-Rex nowadays. Of course, the only theropod dinosaurs, which ones? Or you already know, right? Birds?
Birds, yeah.
Yeah. Of course, you had the ones that resembled Tyrannosaurs were actually completely different. You had the Allosaurs. Did you know Allosaurus was not an ancestor of the Tyrannosaurs?
Nope, did not know.
Yeah, I think I had heard it before, but until reading this book, I didn't really realize that they're a completely different group. And also the Carcharodontids from Africa. I used to think they were just like direct cousins of T-Rex, but they were more like Allosaurus, where they had more slender teeth and slender skulls, even though they got pretty big. Yeah, but the book goes into them a little bit, but for the most part it's just about Tyrannosaurs. Of course, there's a section really goes into the adaptations that they got over time, especially for T-Rex. Of course, you had the bigger, broader skull, bigger, broader teeth. Actually, let's start at the beginning. It's pretty interesting how apparently Tyrannosaurs appeared in the mid-Jurassic 100 and something million years ago. They're pretty similar size and shape-wise to other similar yet different groups, especially the early Allosaurs. And I don't think the Carcharodontids were around yet. But there are two traits that really set them apart, and they could tell they were early Tyrannosaurs. Those two features, the only two ways that they could tell something from the mid-Jurassic was a Tyrannosaur, were fused nasal bones, nasal being nose bones, and D-shaped teeth in cross-section. Isn't that crazy? Those are the only two features that you can tell that something was a Tyrannosaur and not another group.
Yeah, that's very small details.
Yeah, and they're really, at least at the time this book came out a few years ago, I know it's not too old because it talks about newer discoveries like Tyrannosaurs with feathers. This book came out in 2016. Yeah, 2 years ago. There's really not that much about the first known Tyrannosaurs, but then in the late Jurassic, you have dinosaurs like Guanlong, which is really not that big, but they have complete specimens and over in China, and they're feathered.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And they also found another bigger one that weighed at least a couple of tons called Yutyrannus, and that one was also covered in feathers. So now there's a big debate whether all Tyrannosaurs have feathers.
Right.
Like, growing up with Jurassic Park, would you expect them to have feathers?
No. But do you think that anywhere in North America we would be able to find a full specimen with feathers still intact?
I mean, it's possible, but as a lot of paleontology nerds and professionals know, North America does not usually have that great preservation. You mainly get bones and teeth. I remember somewhere in this book it talked about some kind of dinosaur, I don't think it was a Tyrannosaur, that was found with feather preservation in Canada, which is where you normally only find those bones and teeth, so you never know. It's like a black sheep, but it's unlikely, but still possible. I wouldn't put my money on it, but definitely dinosaur research is always going on. Even in this book, it says we still have a lot of progress to make, but
yeah,
there's been so much research, especially Tyrannosaurus rex. There's a lot known about them.
Yeah.
But speaking about preservation, I had no idea about this. Did you know that some pterosaurs or pterodactyls had feathers?
I think I did know that. That's been something that's been known for quite a while now, right?
Maybe I did know. Yeah, because for History of Life, I had a professor who studies pterosaurs, so I might have seen pictures, but I don't know, just thinking about pterosaurs in general, I would think they would not have feathers, but the more I think about it, it makes sense.
Yeah.
So there's actually, I didn't know about this, there's a debate of whether the most ancient archosaurs, that includes the dinosaurs, the pterosaurs, crocodiles, their ancestors might have had feathers.
I would believe it.
So it's possible. And, there's a lot of general anatomy and talk and general functions. It's not just about Tyrannosaurs, it brings up technical information as it applies to Tyrannosaurs to get a solid foundation, and then just kind of builds off of it. And this book went by pretty fast for how big it is. Let's see, a little less than 300 pages. Especially talked quite a bit about how they modified their feet for more efficient moving, not just sprinting.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, T-Rex have huge jaw, muscles, and head. Arms got smaller. I don't know about you, Hope, but I just hate how people joke about T-Rex a lot. Not to defend them, but I don't know, does it bother you at all a bit?
To make fun of their arms?
Yeah, when they have other weapons.
Right? Well, people make fun of their walnut-sized brains,
I was just,
so to speak.
Yeah, on Land of the Lost, I was going to bring that up. The author, I feel like, defended him. It's like, sure, they weren't too bright, but other animals with brains this size can still apply critical thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't have to have a huge brain to really do higher level thinking. But talking about brain size, of course, a lot of that goes into sensory function, not only in our brains, but especially with predators. You know, they say we only use 10% of our brain. Of course, that's not true. And talking about those senses, which of these do you think tyrannosaurs didn't really use? Smell, sight, or hearing?
Sight.
Nope, that's where the myth is. You always hear they have small eyes, right?
Well, I always remember hearing, whether from movies or whatever, that they really could only see movement and not necessarily pick you out of foliage, I guess.
Yeah, but that seems to be a myth because their eyes didn't seem that big compared to their skull, but actually the size of their eyes are actually pretty large. And so, you know, especially being a predator, that's very useful for picking out movement at a distance or any kind of movement.
Then, if I had to change my answer, what were my options again?
Well, I was trying to get you to talk about that, but
okay.
They also have really good sense of smell, and I don't remember about their hearing, but I'm pretty sure they're pretty good. I would assume. You know, I don't like to assume, but probably not as strong as their sight and smell. You know, those are the main. I wouldn't be surprised if their hearing was really good. I got another question for you, Hope.
Okay.
How many fingers do T-Rexes have?
3.
Yeah, I probably would have said that too before reading this book. They actually only have 2.
Oh.
Yeah, and do you think their wrists faced up like that or to the side, away from them?
How I remember being depicted in things, I would thought it was to the side.
You guessed better than I did. I always thought they always faced it up, but the book cleared that up. See, they have a picture right there. That's
Oh, yeah.
So they always faced to the side and they couldn't turn it. Because you see how tight looking their shoulder girdle or whatever it's called. They could not. Of course, they think the arms are vestigial, but it might have been used in mating. It might have some function, but again, nobody knows for sure. And I guess everyone has their opinion of what their arms were for or not for. Personally, I think they were mostly vestigial. I mean, they might have been used in mating a little bit, but then again, that's speculation. I don't like to speculate too much. And I meant to ask, when you were at USF, did you ever see the replica Tarbosaurus skull? It looked like a Tyrannosaurus Rex skull. It was in one of the science buildings.
Science? I don't believe so.
Yeah, I forget what the building's called, but I used to do labs in the building, and I think I had to meet with somebody in one of their offices, and I was just walking by, and there's a display case, and it had a full-grown Tarbosaurus, which is basically a very close relative of the T-Rex that lived at the same time. It looked like a Tyrannosaurus skull until I looked closer and it said Tarbosaurus. It's just a replica, but it was huge. It was probably like 4 feet long, 3 or 4 feet.
Wow.
Could have easily fit inside of it.
Was it the social science building?
Might have been. Again, I don't know. I don't even know if it's still there, but it was pretty big and impressive.
Okay.
And the book doesn't go into this too much, but I just hate how people think they're a failure because they went extinct, but they were very successful over time, like I said.
Well, I feel like people assume that all dinosaurs lived during one period.
Oh, yeah.
And that there weren't different periods of time where there were different dinosaurs. So they think all the dinosaurs lived at one set time, and then bam, they were all gone. That there was no evolution, there was no basically evolving of the species into more dinosaurs. They just thought dinosaurs were dinosaurs.
Adapting over time.
Right.
And
then they died.
Yeah, the book goes into that, about how the conditions in the mid-Jurassic were. There were no flowering plants. It was mostly a lot of big sauropods like brachiosaurs. There were a lot of stegosaurs. And just instead of flowering plants, there were a lot of ginkgos and ferns and those kinds of plants.
Mm-hmm.
And as the plants changed, so did the herbivores. Because the herbivores changed, so did the carnivores. I think, and the author thinks this too, that shift caused the extinction of the allosaurs and the other kinds of carnivores, and it led to the rise of the tyrannosaurs for them to flourish and get bigger and have those opportunities. And I wanted to ask you about that. What do you think tyrannosaurs mostly ate? If I gave you the options, do you think they mostly ate stegosaurs, triceratopses, hadrosaurs, or ankylosaurs?
I mean, this is...
Yeah, it's a loaded question. Or do you think they didn't have a favorite? They just ate whatever?
I feel like they probably just ate whatever. But were even all of those answers, were all of those species around at the same period of time? Yeah. Or
how about, let's say T-Rex, and let's X out Stegosaurus, because I don't think they lived at the very late Cretaceous. So between Triceratops, Ankylosaurs, and Hadrosaurs.
Say Hadrosaurs?
Oh, yeah.
Just a guess.
Any idea why?
No.
I think it's because they had the least amount of defenses. So they were mostly a herding dinosaur. And again, the book goes into this, how we know for sure that they were herding social animals because they look at the footprints, they look at them dying together. So they were mostly safety in numbers. But of course, you always had the weaker individuals dying out.
Right.
The young, the old, the injured. And there's more evidence of them eating hadrosaurs with their bite marks on their bones than any other dinosaurs at the time.
Interesting.
But definitely, and the book has a lot of speculation, but I think it's mostly good speculation, how they might have the younger ones that are definitely smaller. Maybe they resembled the older types of tyrannosaurs a little bit. You know, only so many young ones have been discovered, but they might have used their arms more. That's more slender skulls, because they probably had different lifestyle a little bit. It might have eaten different prey.
Right.
You know, because even in animals today, with predators, you rarely, I don't think at all, you see where adults and juveniles eat one type of prey.
Yeah. Unless
they're very social and they're like birds that find prey. I don't know how social or nurturing, and the book goes into that too, how much we don't know about them.
Well, it's hard to infer, like, social, well, I mean, because you said with the hadrosaurs that we were able to decipher that they were social because of footprints and finding lots of fossils together, so they would die together. But it's pretty hard to try and infer from just fossils how each species lived day to day.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And there's a whole section about their Paleo Ecology, or their ecology and behavior, and I'm just like, man, this section is kind of underwhelming, and it has a lot of speculation. But, you know, a lot of it goes to modern animals and using them as references.
Right.
Because you can't just study bones all day. You know, you can't get a paleontology degree without taking a lot of biology classes.
Mm-hmm.
You know, as much, it would be nice to just not take biology or geology classes. But it makes sense. And do you think adult T-Rexers were mostly ambushers, scavengers, or did they chase down their prey? The book goes into this. I'm just wondering what you would think.
I would say chase down their prey, but I don't think they're trying to chase down... I think they were trying to chase down sick or injured.
Yep, you'd be right.
Yeah.
And of course, because they're huge, it'd be very hard to hide. And the limitations of scavenging, just relying on that.
Right.
Because of course, they're not like vultures. They can't just move around effortlessly.
Right.
That costs a lot of energy for a huge predator to be walking around for miles and miles and just only try to find dead prey.
Yeah, were most scavenging species on the smaller side?
I think vultures get kind of big, but then again, they're flyers and they can move around pretty easily.
Yeah.
They have that to their advantage. Because even sharks, I'm surprised there's for as effortlessly as they move around and they have really strong senses, there's no known species of shark that is purely scavenging. Yeah, so I think it would be very unlikely that tyrannosaurs move around on land would just... I'm sure they did scavenge. Actually, the book provided a couple of examples of that. Or actually one, where it ate up one part of the body. I think it ate like a leg. And they think that it was already dead and it was starting to get preserved, but the leg was sticking out. So that's why the leg, that part of the body, had a bunch of bite marks. Yeah. Most predators are optimistic.
Right.
But that leads me to, if you had to guess what T-Rex mostly did in its waking hours, or just in general, how did it use most of its time?
I would say looking for food.
Just sitting and waiting, or looking around?
Walking around, looking around.
And again, they might have, nobody knows for sure, and I'd heard this before, I knew this because of my general knowledge on sharks. Most huge predators that have a very high energy cost, they mostly do nothing. Yeah, they just rest, because you think...
Well, because it takes so much energy to move that big body around.
Especially eating a big meal, they can survive off that for a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm really glad they brought that point. I had in the back of my head, I thought that was the case. Again, nobody knows for sure, but that seems more likely than not. Because you always see the depictions of... Because everybody wants to see a tyrannosaur hunting or doing something, right?
Right.
Because that's what's fun about it.
Right.
But then you have to escape out of that fantasy world and look at the reality of it. And maybe they were exciting every once in a while, but I almost guarantee if you had a time machine and look back, they probably weren't everywhere because the ecosystem can only sustain so many large predators, and also they weren't always hunting.
Right.
So it's probably one of those, every once in a blue moon you could see tyrannosaurs hunting. And like you said, of course they would like a free meal, but and the book goes into it, there's been research about this. Hadrosaurs were most definitely faster than tyrannosaurs, but they think they also had less endurance, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Or less stamina?
Yeah, probably. So if they were starving and there are no especially young, disoriented, or injured prey, they probably relied on endurance.
Right.
But again, most predators are unsuccessful when they're hunting.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. You think being super sophisticated, evolved animals, they would always be successful. Do you know which of the African animals has the most success on its hunts?
Crocodiles?
They're mostly sit and wait. Or I guess they're ambushers. Actually, I think they're less successful than... It's a land animal. Land predator.
Land. Is it... Maybe I'll take a wild guess. Hyena.
Somewhat close. Well, they're actually more related to cats, I think. But hyenas are their own thing. But you think they resemble dogs, so they're closely related, but they're something different. Actually, the African hunting dogs are the most successful.
Do they hunt in packs?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I think that's in part why. And they're very sophisticated and resourceful, efficient predators. I think hyenas are also up there. And kudos to you for knowing they're not just obligate scavengers.
Yeah.
Because they actually hunt down their prey much more than scavenging.
Yeah.
I think for sure Tyrannosaur, for how huge T-Rex was, could not just only scavenge. I almost have no doubt about that. Yeah, the book has a nice mix of going into ecology a little bit with speculation and the most possible based on the anatomy and what we know about current predators, going into that, and also the form and function. And I want to go about their body temperature a little bit. Now, of course, reptiles in general are cold-blooded, but there seems to be a case with something as huge and as active as T-Rex. You'd think they'd be warm-blooded, right?
I don't know, because you would think, because are dinosaurs considered reptiles?
It depends on how you define reptiles. But if you define birds as reptiles, then yeah, they are.
Oh, that's true.
I think some people like to call the cold-blooded ones reptiles and theropods their own kind of group. I would call them reptiles. But of course, birds are all warm-blooded.
Right. I don't know then. I don't know what I would think.
Yeah, I coming in before reading this book, I thought they were definitely warm-blooded because, as Dr. Bob Baker said, you don't find their fossils very much. And of course, digging up a Peace River, I've been doing it for several years. I've only found one mammal predator tooth, probably from a wolf or something related. And I found at least a dozen or two herbivore teeth. So, because they're warm-blooded, they're constantly using energy, and they can only be so successful in their hunts. So that means there's less of them and less of their fossils. Dr. Backer tried to use the same evidence for T-Rex, saying they're definitely warm-blooded because you only find so much of their fossils, excluding teeth, because, they constantly replace their teeth. Their teeth are not that rare, surprisingly. I don't know if you knew that.
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I think they're only so expensive because of supply and demand.
Yeah.
It's like, that's one of the only reasons why I don't have any dinosaur fossils. They're just so dang expensive, and you can find some pretty good deals on other kinds of fossils. Also dinosaurs, depending on your price range. But anyway, I was surprised at how quickly Dr. Hone completely dismissed that idea. He's saying you can't say it's definitely warm-blooded just because of that. But he also sees the evidence mostly because of how fast they grow. And it's, even when it's cold, when they're living at higher latitudes where you'd think their growth would slow, but they had still really fast growth. So he thinks there's some kind of warm-bloodedness going on, maybe not full-fledged. And the book goes into that. How, great white sharks are they have elevated body temperatures, but they're not completely warm-blooded.
Interesting, I did not know that.
Yeah, because it's the way their circulatory system works. They have some special adaptations where their body temperature can be elevated more than their environment. But I think it's but they have to keep moving, or else then their body temperature will dip.
Right.
So they're not naturally, their metabolism isn't as quick as warm-blooded animals. But by having really efficient systems and keep moving, they can retain that heat.
Interesting.
Yeah, so I think that's what the author was kind of getting at. They might have been somewhere in between. And I thought that was really interesting. I hadn't really thought of that. Yeah, I think overall this book had a nice balance of things about form, function, other kinds of tyrannosaurs, not just T-Rex. Talking about the ecology and the potential competitors and prey items, and mostly talk about T-Rex because that's where a lot of information is known. But it definitely set you up if you want to know more about tyrannosaurs in general and their evolution. It's a good starting point. Of course, no book is going to have all the answers, as you know.
Well, we don't even have all the answers.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it went into good detail in saying how T-Rex isn't the biggest and best tyrannosaur just because it has, of its size and being bigger and stronger than other types of predatory dinosaurs. It's just very adapted at what it does. And it doesn't go on to say that they're any better than the allosaurs or carcharodontids just because they use their hands more and they had more cutting type of teeth more than crushing types. Because how easy would would it be to say T-Rex was the most efficient, best predator of all time, right?
I mean, it would be easy to say because they're so large, but it doesn't mean it's factual. It's just an assumption.
Yeah. Unless you have something to go by, if you have some evidence that it was the most efficient predator, which it probably wasn't,
because it was so large.
Yeah. I'm sure it had some unsuccessful hunts and had some success and failures. And just because it went extinct doesn't mean it's failure. Of course, it met the KT boundary where there's a lot of volcanoes going on.
Yeah.
The asteroid, just everything. 60% of life went extinct. And of course, if you're a huge specialized predator, like, you can kiss your chances goodbye.
Right.
I mean, even a lot of birds, small birds and small mammals went extinct, which I'm kind of surprised about.
Yeah.
So definitely Tyrannosaur had no chance of surviving that. Not to say it was a failure, of course. Talked about feathers. Coming into this, I thought they're definitely feathered, and that helped them retain body heat. But again, the author is he doesn't, in some parts he speculates, especially saying the earliest Tyrannosaurs were in the early Jurassic, and there was no evidence presented at all. So definitely they're around by the mid-Jurassic. So it's just speculation that you would assume they came earlier than that. But again, nobody knows for sure how many of them had feathers. It might be safe to assume T-Rex had feathers. You look at like Saurian, that game, it shows T-Rex feathers. But definitely, for sure, like, how Jurassic Park portrays their head and you can see the skull outline.
Yeah.
Kind of like shrink-wrapped heads. They most definitely didn't have heads like that where you could see all the skull bones.
Yeah.
I think that's more of an artistic interpretation.
Yeah.
But, because how many animals nowadays do you see where you can see their skull bones?
Not very many.
Especially among big animals where they have a lot of meat.
Right.
That seemed very disadvantageous.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely I recommend this book if you want to know more about large predators, especially if you don't know about T-Rex like I did, or Tyrannosaurs in general. Some of it was, like, I already kind of knew that, but like I said, it was refreshing to hear. Talking about their prey, talking about how they hunted, which we already talked about. Might go into more books like this. If you guys have any suggestions about more types of paleo books, any biology books, anything really, science articles, I like books like this where it talks about more than just the predators, talking about their competitors, their prey items. Because how often is it you find a book about an animal and it just only talks about the animal, right?
Right. A lot. I feel like most.
Probably more than not.
Right.
I like books where it talks about their role in the ecosystem and talks about the ecosystem in general, not just one little, because it's a link. There's so many connected.
It's just one piece of the puzzle.
Exactly. Yeah. All right. So on that note, I think that would be a good place to stick the feather in the cap. If anyone still says that. If you guys have any questions, concerns, suggestions, let me know. And I'll see you guys next time.
See you next time.